In the last video, we covered Russia's refinery campaign, a slow bleed across an industry most ordinary Russians never see up close. This one is different because the target is something almost every Russian household actually uses. On July 19th alone, one attack killed 8 people and cost an estimated $1.3 billion. Not a refinery, a warehouse. That was the moment this campaign stopped being a side story and became one of the costliest single strikes of the entire war. Today's video is about the second Ukrainian campaign running in parallel to the refinery strikes. This one aimed at Wildberries, Russia's largest online retailer, and at the ordinary economic life it represents for tens of millions of people who have never had to think about this war, touching their own household budget until now. Welcome back. If you haven't seen the refinery video yet, that's worth watching alongside this one. Together, they show two very different ways of applying pressure on the same country at the same time, and neither fully makes sense in isolation. Let's start with what Wildberries actually is, because the scale of it is easy to underestimate from outside Russia. Wildberries is Russia's largest e-commerce platform, often described as the country's version of Amazon, and it's genuinely central to how ordinary Russian households shop. Its founder, Tatiana Kim, is Russia's wealthiest woman. The company had already been under international sanctions since 2022, when Poland's government described it as the largest taxpayer in the Russian Federation. Its banking arm was separately sanctioned by the EU in July over its financial contribution to the Russian state budget. And according to Ukrainian officials, the company's website has listed military-relevant equipment for sale, including drone components and body armor, a detail Wildberries has not directly addressed, though it has denied broader accusations of involvement in military logistics. Being the country's largest taxpayer is itself worth sitting with. This isn't a marginal business Russia could afford to lose without noticing. Its tax contributions alone make it a structural pillar of the federal budget, which is exactly why sustained damage to it matters well beyond the individual sellers who stock its shelves. Since mid-July, Ukraine has struck roughly 20 separate Wildberries facilities across Russia and occupied Crimea. That's not a handful of scattered incidents. It's a sustained campaign against a single company's logistics network, spread across regions thousands of kilometers apart, hitting a new city on what has become close to a weekly rhythm rather than an occasional headline. The single costliest strike came on July 19th and 20th, hitting the Elektrostal warehouse in Moscow region. More than 360,000 square meters, employing over 8,000 people, alongside the Kotovsk Logistics Center in Tambov, opened just the previous year with capacity for 54 million products. 8 people were killed, more than 70 injured. Russian analysts themselves estimated the total economic damage at up to 100 billion rubles, roughly $1.3 billion, making it one of the costliest single strikes on Russian commercial infrastructure of the entire war. Repair costs for the physical facilities alone were separately estimated at up to 35.8 billion rubles, a bill insurance companies are unlikely to fully cover. Russia's own government classified the strike as a terror attack, a designation that says something about how seriously Moscow itself treated the scale of the damage, even while offering no public acknowledgement of why a civilian logistics company had become a priority target in the first place. The campaign didn't stop there. On August 2nd, drones struck a warehouse in Samara region, 800 kilometers from Ukraine's most advanced positions. The same night strikes elsewhere killed 2 people in Saratov and 3 in Udmurtia. Russia's defense ministry claimed it had downed 635 drones that same night, while Ukraine said it had launched 133, with 24 reaching their targets, a gap in reporting typical of how both sides described the same night's events. On August 3rd, Vladimir Oblast, 2 injured alongside a strike on a university where drone technology is developed and tested. On August 6th, Tver region was hit twice within the same week. On August 11th, Voronezh, roughly 15 drones targeting the city. 1 dead, 2 injured, fires across tens of thousands of square meters. Each of these is confirmed by regional governors or by Wildberries' own statements, not solely by Ukrainian sources, which matters for how much weight the pattern deserves. This isn't a campaign whose scale depends on taking Kiev's word for it. Here's the number that actually captures the human cost underneath all of this. Sellers on the platform, according to estimates based on Data Insight market data. face total losses somewhere between $2.7 and $3.5 billion. These aren't corporate shareholders absorbing a stock dip. They're small, independent merchants whose entire inventory sat inside a single warehouse, gone in one night with no meaningful safety net underneath them. That last point is the crux of why this campaign lands differently than the refinery strikes. Wildberries founder Tatiana Kim addressed the security measures her company was taking and explained why the business considers itself under no legal obligation to compensate sellers for losses from these strikes. In practice, according to reporting on the aftermath, the company has begun compensating some affected sellers, but payments have reportedly remained limited, many receiving less than 10% of the value of what was actually destroyed. A refinery strike is absorbed first by a state-owned company and a national budget. A warehouse strike is absorbed almost immediately by individual people who now owe money on inventory that no longer exists, with a company legally shielding itself from having to make that difference whole. Russia's own government has recognized the scale of the problem. Reuters reported that the Kremlin is exploring financial support measures for Wildberries and its affected sellers, including state-backed loans, tax relief, and subsidies. That's a real policy response, not a dismissal, but it's also an admission that the ordinary market mechanism, insurance and company compensation, isn't covering the damage on its own, and that the state is being pulled in to backstop a private company's losses because the alternative is watching a visible slice of the consumer economy simply not recover. It's worth pausing on the irony there. A company sanctioned in 2022 for being the country's largest taxpayer is now, in effect, asking that same government to help absorb losses inflicted specifically because of the war that government is fighting. A circle that closes back on the state no matter which direction you follow the money. None of this means Wildberries stops functioning or that Russian e-commerce collapses. The company has continued redirecting operations to unaffected facilities, and state support, if it materializes at the scale being discussed, could meaningfully cushion the sellers hit hardest. But put this campaign next to the refinery one and a clear division of labor appears. Refineries pressure the state and the energy sector, where the damage is real but initially absorbed by institutions built to absorb exactly this kind of shock. Wildberries pressures ordinary households and small business owners directly, skipping past institutional buffers entirely and landing straight on kitchen table finances, in a way a fuel shortage generally does not. One campaign works on the government's balance sheet. The other works on the ledger of a small seller who has never had a single conversation with anyone in the Kremlin and never will. A single warehouse fire in July cost more than $1 billion and 8 lives. 20 strikes later, thousands of small sellers are still waiting to find out whether they'll ever be made whole. Put alongside the refinery campaign we covered last time, this isn't two separate wars against Russian infrastructure. It's the same strategy, aimed at two different nerves, one connected to the state and one connected directly to ordinary people's kitchen tables. And the real question, the one worth carrying into whatever comes next, is which nerve actually breaks first.